The following podcast contains subject matter that may be unsuitable for more sensible viewers. Views expressed here do not reflect that of any community that you would want to be a part of. Listener discretion is mandatory. Mama, what does trans mean?
No! I got this Naked Grape blue wine. Like, the wine is blue.
It looks like you're drinking Windex. I love it.
Sure, there are reds and whites to choose from. But blue, now that's different. At Naked Grape, we've decided to take wine to the other end of the spectrum. Introducing Naked Grape Blue.
Oh, so wine is
you
a
have the
spectrum now.
confidence to try something new. Get it? It rhymes.
So here's the plan. Here's the plan for Pride is that we're going to buy a bunch of that and a bunch of like empty, like cleaned out Windex bottles. And that's what we're drinking all day.
Oh God, yes.
Madeline, how is Pride Month in Thetford Mines?
Well, there's a lot going on. They are, it's Labatt Blues, but they're all in different colors. The rainbow crosswalk is actually just, deer smear. So it's just, they forgot to clean off the road. But it just forms a natural, beautiful, rainbow.
Well, because like parts of it get moldy and parts of it like
You got it, exactly. So it's a point of pride, and there's still no Starbucks, so I'm not doing too well.
Do you want me to like mail you some like a frappuccino?
Yeah, if you could, yeah, please do. I will pay express shipping. And welcome to this week's episode of Tranifesto. I'm one of your hosts, Madeline. As usual, today I am joined by
Amy Blair.
And Ree Carter.
Ooh, can we do that again where we all say our name long? I'd like to say my name long one of these days.
I don't know how do you say Amy like long. Like
Amy. So yes, thank you for joining. We actually took a bit of time off, even though we released episodes on time. But we're coming back to the show fresh and refreshed. That made
I'm
no
so
sense.
fresh.
So you're popping fresh?
Oh, I'm feeling so fresh. I spent the last 2 days like de-anting my apartment because there were ants. But there are no more ants.
Ew.
I'm proud of you.
And I feel
Did you
really
leave ice cream on the floor again?
No, it was actually really clean.
Because that's how you get ants.
Yeah, or scented lube.
I shouldn't talk about the ants because my landlord might be able to hear me and I didn't tell them there were ants.
It's part of your contract you had to sign. It's like, and you have to let me know which podcast you host. It's a trick question. In Vancouver, everybody has a podcast, so that's just a standard question.
I slipped the SoundCloud link into their mailbox. So today,
we are covering a movie, again, by a director we covered earlier, the Jamie Babbitt. She did But I'm a Cheerleader. And we are covering the 2007, I guess we'll call this feminist lesbian-related comedy. That sounds generic enough. Itty Bitty Titty Committee, which
Lesbians
is...
can't do comedy. What are you talking about?
That's true. There's been never one funny lesbian.
Prove me wrong. Prove me wrong.
I thought Nanette was good.
But was it funny?
Isn't George Carlin a lesbian?
Honorary lesbian.
Okay, cool. Oh, Louis C.K. There we go. Anyway, so...
Oh, God.
Oh, you're canceled.
So a feminist... Yeah, thank you. Feminist lesbian-related comedy film directed by Jamie Babbitt. Released in, September 28th, 2007. It's basically kind of like if a rad femme, but like cool rad femme, zine made a movie.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty apt description of it. So, which one of y'all wants to go with the synopsis?
So our movie centers on Anna, who is this young, just out of high school, taking a gap year lesbian. Well, it's unclear if she's a lesbian. Her mom calls her a lesbian. She doesn't directly identify that way in the movie. Whatever, we'll get to that.
Yeah,
So she's like working at a plastic surgery office as like the receptionist and just sort of getting by and being bored. She just got out of a relationship with like her first girlfriend, which didn't go well, and she broke up with her.
It's a very realistic depiction of a lesbian breakup.
Yeah.
It's asking for each other's CDs back.
Oh yeah, it was like 6 weeks, and she was like getting a phone call from her ex, being like, "Hey, just like I just want you to like, I just want to get my CDs back. You can like leave them at the front door. I don't have to interact with you. Just please can I have my CD." Which we've all been there.
Yeah, except and then it also ended with, "Oh, and stay away from like the two girls' names. They're my friends. They're not your friends anymore."
Oh yeah. Yeah, like custody battles over your buddies.
Friends.
So Anna's working at this plastic surgery office. She's bored, and then this sort of anarcho-queer feminist Sadie graffitis her office with some like radical feminist slogan about women's
As lesbians
bodies.
do.
As you know, as you do.
As you do.
Pretty typical behavior. I'm not being ironic, there it is. and Anna like tries to snitch, but then there's no signal, so she can't call the cops. Because Anna's a fucking cop, but she gets over it. And then Sadie like flirts with her and invites her to come to her radical feminist terrorist cell organization called CLIT.
So far,
no, it's not CLIT. It's the CIA.
Clit's
It's
in action.
CLIT's in action.
So so far a very typical lesbian mating ritual.
Yeah, exactly.
Extremely typical. So Anna goes to CIA meeting. It's called CIA. It's like a funny little.
Yeah, clits in action. Yeah.
No, but like it's CIA. Like this. At one point, Sadie's like, or someone's like, we're CIA or we're Clits in Action, but you can call us the CIA if it makes you more comfortable.
You know what it reminded me of is like, have both of you watched Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back?
Yeah.
No.
Remember, there's there's the part where after they like they free the chimp, and then like they try to frame Jay by like pretending that there's an organization called Clit that is freeing things that is like a terrorist group, and then they get him on things saying like, I am the Clit commander. And it's just him being so that's what that reminded me of.
Well, this the CIA reminds me of like the FLFQ in 1970s Quebec, the Front de Liberation de Femmes de Quebec. You're welcome for my French.
See, I think I have to cut that for my own safety, because
who are like radical feminist, communist, nationalists in 1970s Quebec who did fun stunts in like the legislature and got in lots of trouble, and it was very. They basically did the same sort of stunts as the CIA.
Yeah, including blowing up the Washington Monument, but we'll get to that.
Right, so they like do fun little pranks and political stunts like switching the genders on public washrooms or erecting a statue to Angela Davis in the town square or like in front of City Hall, or writing in front of statues that this man was a rapist and a slave owner, or switching out the mannequins in shop windows with like people of all body types, or doing graffiti, lots of graffiti, giving pamphlets, making zines, going to
lesbians
punk rock
are good
shows.
with their fingers. Just let them do what they do.
Honestly,
good
like
praxis.
we've all been there, but adjacent to like these political activities, the CIA is also like a scene. It's like a kind of a social group where all these like lesbians hang out and party.
Yeah, I think you're both too young to remember this, but like in the 90s, that was pretty much the go-to. That's how it looked.
Yeah.
Your children didn't know that.
And there's also
Kids
a trans guy in the
Pokemon.
group named Aggie, who we'll also talk about later.
Aggie fucking rules.
There's this line that like Aggie is allowed in the group because he's an honorary member because he was born with a clit or something. We'll get to that.
We'll get to that, yeah.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
But because of this sort of social aspect of the group, Anna starts sort of having a relationship with Sadie, the girl who introduced her to the CIA. But Sadie won't commit to her because Sadie is busy dating this like much older, liberal, feminist, rich lady who pays her rents and has these like stuffy meetings, and
It's a sugar mama.
sugar mama, very strange relationship. We'll talk about that too. Eventually, the CIA goes to like this rally where they protest against religious fundamentalists who are protesting gay marriage, but they are also protesting against the liberal gays who are promoting gay marriage because marriage is an evil patriarchal institution that must be abolished. And while they're at this protest being the radicals, they get in a fist fight with the fundamentalists, and this begins a rift in the organization over their tactics and politics, in which they discover that actually the only people who go to their website are them, and they are basically politically irrelevant, and there's like rifts over whether the group is actually having political effects or like whether people are too focused on the social aspect of the scene.
And then everybody in the group basically at one point was sort of dating Sadie, and that's basically how she was recruiting people.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then they wind up at Sadie's place, but they aren't allowed to meet because Sadie's older girlfriend Courtney is having a stuffy meeting, And so the group just splinters and implodes.
It was basically just a scene from Ally McBeal playing in the background.
Yeah, exactly. But then Anna, all heartbroken that Sadie won't pick her over Courtney and still wanting to, like, keep the CIA going, stages, like, a final epic political stunt where they, like, hijack the cable news network where Courtney is speaking about liberal feminism and the Washington Monument, and hijack the network and display, like, the Washington Monument, except the head of the Washington Monument is a dick because it's like a phallic object that must be destroyed. And then they blow up the Washington Monument in the video.
Yeah, they blow up the so apparently, because I was looking this up because I was even confused by this point, so just so we're clear here, that apparently was an installation that was installed by them. So it's like someone put like a penis topper on top of it, and then they blew up the penis topper.
No, that was like video editing.
Well, no, I think what it was just that the movie itself was low budget, so that's why it looked fake. But
Yeah, I couldn't tell which one it was.
Okay, no, it looked very fake.
yeah. Well, because there was a scene earlier, like they have a montage when they're setting up this entire prank where one of them is actually making like a really cartoony looking TNT thing.
Right,
So-
yeah, because that
Yeah.
one person like said that she made explosives.
Yeah, military girl.
So this prank succeeds, and they all celebrate, and Sadie dumps Courtney because Courtney's pissed off about the whole thing. It's like, what the fuck are you kids up to? And then Sadie goes to Anna and is like, hey, you're hot. And you did the thing really good. By the way, I'm single now. And Anna's like, no, I'm not interested. You're actually like a
Bitch now.
flaky bitch. But like, we can still hook up though. And then they hook up, and that's it. Oh shit! I forgot the bit about Aggie. After the group splinters, Anna has like a night where she gets completely shit-faced with Aggie, the trans guy, and they like go to a punk show and get hammered, and then trash the CIA office, and then fuck. And then in the morning, Aggie's really cute and makes Anna like breakfast in bed and gives her a flower. But then
It was so
Sadie
cute.
shows up and is super pissed that Anna cheated on her with Aggie, which is absurd.
Even
because
though
she's
Sadie
seeing
was
Courtney.
cheating on, yeah.
Yeah, but then they sort
It's
of
like hypocritical.
yeah, but in that scene, Anna is also very mean to Aggie. It's like screaming that it was like a mistake and it didn't mean anything and such.
Aggie was my favorite character in this.
Me
I
too.
loved Aggie. He was so sweet.
He's a good boy.
And he was like, but he also, yeah, he was a good boy. Best boy.
So I think that's a summary. I'm sorry that's so messy. I'm a bit drunk and I didn't prepare.
So, perfect. Yeah, I think that. We're so good at this.
Oh my god.
This is a messy
We're
one
the be-
already.
It's okay. So no, I think that was a pretty good. I think that was a pretty good summary of.
I disagree. But
Okay, well, no, it's, you know what? I believe in you, as the person who matters. I believe in you.
the only person on this show who matters. Not in Hawks.
Exactly. Just in general, if it's not about me, it should be. But going on, just diving away from me for just a second into the movie, going over kind of, we'll get to queer representation, but this is a rare opportunity for us where we actually get to speak about something else that we're interested in and have
Relevant.
some thoughts on.
Very relevant
Yeah.
to queer experience, frankly.
Exactly, and so that's going to be also the feminist angle of this movie.
Yeah.
Because
like
it
the
is-
activism.
Yeah, and so that's what we kind of want to. I kind of want to get into in like the first place, which is activism as politics versus like a scene. So like the idea of just like doing the actual politics versus like making sure people know that you look like you're doing it or you're playing the part.
Yeah, as like an aesthetic, but also like as this like social group, right? Where you're doing politics and doing like this really radical, anarchist, exciting, subversive activism with a bunch of like queers who you're also like sleeping with, and like doing a lot of like drinking a lot and smoking a lot and going to cool shows and like dressing cool and making your hair cool and like having fun, right?
Yeah. And it's like it's also too. It's like one of those things that shows up with like our main character Anna and her search for her identity. Like in this movie, like in the beginning, she's just like she works at a plastic surgery clinic. She's very like soft spoken, very timid. And
yeah,
then
she's
again,
like
she gets
butch, but she doesn't really identify that way because she doesn't
yeah, exactly.
isn't in any of these circles.
Yeah, and so as she kind of gets involved in the CIA, which is just weird to say, but as she gets involved in the CIA, she slowly becomes more also involved in feminist politics and ideologies to the point that she all of a sudden, like, it's the... Like, feminism has nothing to do with spray painting on your walls or dyeing your hair pink, but it's because she gets wound up in it, that's just something that she ends up doing. And I think there's something to be said for the interesting part of, like, expressing genuine politics through your appearance, obviously. Like, you know, some people like to shave the sides of their heads.
It's like lifestyle anarchism.
Exactly. And you could do it because you like it, but there's also, too, there's a sense of, like... Yeah, there's this one part with Sadie, or just Sadie in general, actually, as a character, where she seems like the woke cool one in the very beginning, where she seems like she's the one who's in control of the situation.
Yeah,
she knows
and like
all the
knows
shit
all
that's
these
going
politics, and she's gonna teach Anna all the cool radical politics. And she has all
Right.
these cool ideas that Anna's never heard of. But really, like, she's not that person.
Yeah, she's not at all. And I mean, like, she was enabled by her older lesbian lover, which again we'll touch on. She's enabled by an older lesbian lover to live that kind of lifestyle. But like at the end of the day, like, you know, because Sadie seems like she's like a girl who's just like, I know what I have to do, I'm going to do it. Like, she's inspiring. But at the end of the day, like, she has absolutely zero backbone. Like, just absolutely
Well,
none.
yeah, but she's also like doing this scene, like the CIA for her. It's like a cool opportunity to like meet women who she can have flings with and like go and do cool radical stuff and go to parties.
Even
and
though she's in
smoke.
charge of it, it's still like she's the head of it, and it's also like completely performative for her.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's that other girl with the bangs whose name I forgot. I don't know if either of you.
No, I should probably pull up a cast list.
I have the Wikipedia article for Heinrich Himmler open. Well, because I've been watching The Man in the High Castle. So, like, Shuli, who's this, like, cool feminist, like, radical feminist with, like, bangs and, like, glasses, who, I don't know if you know the type, I know the type, who's, like, really, actually, really into the politics, like, really engaged with, like, radical feminism and, like, reads all this stuff, and...
Yeah.
Well, yeah, she's read the Scum Manifesto 7 times. She has an annotated copy on his... Like, and
She has
like,
it tattooed on her arm.
she knows all the dates of all of the important legislation and stuff. She's very well read and actually politically engaged. And for her, the CIA isn't this social group, it's a political group. Like, she's straight. She's sleeping, well, mostly straight. And she's like mostly sleeping with like men who have nothing to do with the organization. She comes to the CIA for like politics. And she gets really frustrated with like the social scene aspect of it. Like she says, like, this isn't a dating service, you know, this is about like real shit to Anna when she's like all wimpy over Sadie. And that conflict is like a sort of essential feature of why the group implodes.
Yeah, because I mean, like, you have all of them there for different reasons, and this kind of comes back to the conversation about the main point of this, which is the aesthetic versus the actual the meat and potatoes of it. Because, you know, you had one girl who was there because it just made her look cool, and, you know, she wasn't, you know, she really wasn't, even though she was the leader. You had, you know,
We're so good at this. Sorry. Is it Marcy?
you had Shuli. I'm stoned. You have Shuli, who also, like you said, is very much into the politics. But then you also had some of the other girls there. Like, one of them was an artist, and she just wanted to do art installation programs. You had Aggie.
Yeah,
who
art and like political art.
Yeah, and then you had Aggie, who was just like fucking awesome and just chill. Which also,
Yeah.
shout out to trans dudes for being the chillest motherfuckers on the planet. But
Aggie is
It's
the
true.
only
The
good
only
person
likable
that's-
character.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, Aggie. The thing that sucks about Aggie is it was played by a cis woman. But
Okay, yeah, that blows.
that does blow,
But-
unfortunately.
Well, especially because, okay, so like we've talked about a lot of movies where cis people play trans characters, but it stings especially here because this is a movie that's like sort of really in the sort of queer activism space. You know, it's not like
Yeah.
a Hollywood movie. It's like a low budget, radical feminist movie for like people who are already sort of interested in this stuff. And like you could have done it.
Yeah, it was.
Well, that's something I'm wondering is because there is this, like, we're criticizing it from that point, but I'm not really sure what the actual intention of the text of the film is. If it is...
What do you mean?
If it's saying, oh, yeah, this stuff is frivolous, but, like, da-da-da-da, or if it's, like... If it is, like, actually putting sort of the frivolous, you know, aesthetics of it on the same level as the action or even ahead of it and like not really criticizing it the way we are.
Yeah,
because like with the like I was confused at the end where it was just like they put a penis on the top of the Washington Monument and then blew the penis up. It was like, okay, that's cool, but like
it's like this triumphant moment.
Yeah, which is like, and it comes back to like in an idea that's represented inside the film where there's the older lesbian who's in a relationship with
Courtney.
Sadie. Courtney, who's in a relationship with Sadie, and Courtney basically has this line. What was the line again? You said it wonderfully earlier, Amy. You remembered it.
Wait, which one?
The one about the practical application
Oh,
versus theory.
yeah. So Courtney says because Sadie like suggests that Anna go to like study women's studies in university,
Yeah.
and because she's in a gap year, and Courtney, the older liberal feminist girlfriend of Sadie, is like, oh, be careful with that, Anna. I saw Sadie go to women's studies, and I think that she learned more about postmodern feminist theory than about like actually affecting change.
Yeah, and thank you. And that's the point, which is just like I like as much as I like the rad femme stuff. And by the way, when we say rad femme in this podcast, we are talking about the cool rad femmes, not the
Not TERFs. We're talking about
not
like,
TERFs.
The like radical feminists who are queer inclusive and like trans inclusive, which is what this
Exactly.
movie is about. It's not about TERFs. It's about like
The interesting thing I find in terms of or one of the facts where the film kind of explores the idea of like the aesthetic versus the application or the actual use of feminism to move things forward is represented through their dynamic. And the reason being is because like there is like I like that red femme scene, like punk zines, stuff like that stuff is awesome to me personally. I love it. I just finished about a month ago reading a book, Girls to the Front, which was a look at like Bikini Kill and that kind of scene.
yeah.
But it's one of those things where it's just like, okay, it is cool to do these activist art. I like to do activist art personally. I actually kind of aligned with the art girl in this movie. But at the same time too, there is just because like there's this moment that I kind of agree with, and you guys might not, which is the idea of just like in order for a message to receive the mass audience, it has to be neutered a bit and softballed, which I don't
Palatable.
like. Exactly, and I personally think it's stupid. I think like everyone should just be able to take it. But in that regards, like it's the idea of taking the radical feminist ideas, which is just like, men shouldn't have obviously control of the bodies, the oppression, that kind of stuff, and then going into like, hey, we need to talk about women's reproductive rights, which is a more palatable message.
Yeah, well, and it's like the aesthetic that their activism centers around is consciously confrontational. Like their idea is to be like radical and aggressive and confrontational and in opposition to basically everybody who isn't in the scene. And this is like something you see a lot. Like if you're not us, you are against us, versus if you're not with us, if you're against us. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
we, the CIA, are the people who are right and everyone else is wrong. And the only way for us to convince them that we're right is to like just be as aggressive and confrontational as possible.
yeah, which I mean, it has its place in like social discourse, but as like the main spearhead of a movement, I don't know. I think it got lost in the execution of the film, but there was this. I think it was trying to say that there's a balance between the two, and
Yeah.
I don't think I don't think, as much as I love Julie Babbitt, I don't think she pulled it off with this one.
Especially, like, I mean, even us who are, like, receptive to, that type of radical messaging, like, I can't imagine, like, not cringing at, I'd be like, if somebody, like, actually pulled off, like, the Washington Monument penis thing, like, I thought it would be, like, entertaining that somebody did it, but I can't imagine I can't imagine being thought provoked.
I think one of the things that the movie touched on was the generational switch between almost like second and third wave feminism in terms of its view of like sex and sexuality. Because like one of the things in there was the whole idea of just like, women's bodies being sexualized, which is obviously a problem, but at the same time too, it removes the element of just like, well, some women want to wear those clothes because it makes them feel good. Like the idea of like, it's like, oh, you don't need to go get because there's a scene in the plastic surgery clinic where she's like, oh, you don't need to get your breasts. You're beautiful just the way you are. You only think you need breasts because of the way you've been programmed to receive that.
And I was waiting for her to get challenged on it, and the the like film never challenged
Yeah.
her on this like
Exactly.
specific viewpoint.
Yeah, which like, yeah, because I thought in that moment, genuinely, because that character who came in was pretty much nameless, but she was in the But I'm a Cheerleader. Anyways, the extra that came in and basically was supposed to be there for the surgery, that would have been a great time to be like, but I want to do this for me, and then just had a discussion about that. And so that's where it's like you can see the reminiscence of second wave feminism in there, still trying to make up its mind about how it feels about sexuality.
Yeah, sort of vaguely in that topic. I think that, like, I am very sympathetic to the politics of the CIA. I think that they're a little bit heavy-handed with their politics, but, like, I'm very sympathetic to their, like, political messaging. But what I see in that kind of, like, organization, and I see this in real life too, is when it becomes so aesthetically focused and when it becomes such a scene and like so performative, especially when it's like these are teenagers, you know, like they're figuring this shit out, and having this political scene is like the first time they're getting involved in politics, and they're very confrontational. And yes, they're right mostly, except for certain things, but like they are like totally convinced that they are the only people who have a point, and going through this phase is like very it's not productive.
Yeah,
like we've all been there. But
yeah, and it's also very interesting too, because it also shows like that's where the starting point is. So coming back to that what we were originally discussing about the the aesthetic of political activism versus the actual passion or the soul behind it, like the aesthetic can be what lures people into it, kind of like a gateway. So it does have its place in the spectrum of things. Like, to be seen as something is as important to have those beliefs. There is a, as you go through it, I guess, an understanding, and as you become more wise to it, that there's like, it's like the difference, like saying like for example, like I'm angry as a person, like I see like a lot of inequalities in the world, and that makes me angry. I don't wake up screaming. I wake up screaming because of other reasons, but it's spoiler alert, I have nightmares about spiders and go-karts. But the like it's okay to have that.
It was years ago. She's dead, and it's not your fault.
I killed the spider.
You have to let go.
I was the one who killed Charlotte's Web. It was me. Anyways, but yeah, like having the aesthetic of it is important, but it also learns the difference between like representing what your beliefs are and putting those in action, rather than just like, hey, I have pink hair, I have pink dye in my hair, that makes me super cool.
yeah, I have pink dye in my hair, and I think it makes me basic.
Well, because personally, I'm comparing it to like, like I definitely had my like Antifa cat girl phase. The fucking like the combat boots, like ripped up.
Well, they give you those at the clinic, so it's not really our fault.
Big like trans flag pin like prominently like somewhere, and like
an unsteamed flag.
A patch that says like kill the system, but it's spelled CISTEM.
Mandatory transition.
Yeah, or it's a baseball bat that says "Bash the Fashion" trans colors. Like the two really aren't.
But yeah, so but that definitely like helps me relate to other people in the same situation as me. But now I feel like I am more mature and I'm past that phase. But I also feel like my politics are much more developed, obviously, than they were at the time.
Yeah.
So definitely, like, the more I present it as part of what the typical trans activist person was, is very unrelated to my developed
your actual
understanding
politics.
of
Like
the politics.
my politics.
Yeah.
Like I sort of had a phase like that too, quite briefly. But my politics are not like more liberal now than they were then. In a lot of ways, I think my critique has expanded a lot of like liberal politics. But like I'm not so aggressively posturing my radicalism and my socialism and my activism. I'm doing it like I have a much more sort of grounded view of my theory and my like political worldview, and I'm not viewing it so aesthetically.
Yeah. Also, there's a dog that apparently wants to have a word right now.
Good boy.
Oh, yeah, sorry. That's...
Or
no, that's okay.
those that lie between.
No, I'm leaving that in. I want that dog's hot takes on this. No, I agree with you. I mean, for me, like, my politics used to be more central. Yes, I was a dirty centrist. Boo, hiss. But,
Cancelled.
like, for me, when I know, absolutely canceled. I just got canceled by most of Twitter.
Unforgivable.
I'm just saying Joe Rogan has some really good points. But
I do think that we should have mandatory DMT and abolish fucking what's the one where like you have to hire minorities?
Affirmative action.
Affirmative action. Yeah, abolish affirmative action, mandatory DMT.
Yeah, I mean that's a weird
meant.
centrist take, but you know. But like I used to be more centrist, and it was through like the music of like Julie Ruins or Bikini Kill that like because of that aesthetic, I became more interested in the scene and diving into it more. And it was through that aesthetic that I eventually became. Well, I was about to say radicalized, but I've gone very very left because it's just like it's where now I view my moral compass going. But it was through
what my constant pestering you to identify as a feminist.
I will never forget the first time I told you I did not identify as a feminist, and the look on your face was just mortified, absolutely mortified. And it's just
as long as you admit that you were wrong and I was right. And
I like to think that over the years your politics have come closer to mine. Anyways, the point is I am a dirty fucking feminist now. Whatever, this is the fucking title. I'm an identity minimalist, which is ironic saying that, but it's still like the aesthetic has a place, and I think that's the part I wanted to highlight most off is just like aesthetic does have a place inside a cultural movement or a scene like this, so the scene is important as a gateway into something else.
Well, and it's also like a good stepping stone socially when you're like socially isolated as like a queer teenager and you don't know what the fuck is up, and you're like you don't know how to view your identity in relation to society, and you don't have any friends who are like you. This kind of scene does offer an opportunity to like figure that shit out and like have fun and be a messy teenager, and I think that's important. Like I trust you less if you didn't go through this phase.
Yeah, like we all had to go through it in some capacity or another. Yeah, all great points. All great points to in terms of like where each of those land on the spectrum. But moving along for just a second, kind of moving on to the next point, I would like to tackle the idea of the relationships in the film, because I think there's a lot to explore there in a lot of different ways. I mean, just fucking whoever wants to take that.
Well, because everyone's fucking everyone. It's like every queer circle I've ever been in. It's messy, there's a lot of tension, there's a lot of spite.
Everybody has dated everybody at some point, and you will too.
Yeah, and then you join the circle and you start dating someone and everyone has a take.
This is a romantic erasure.
Yeah, true. So, one of the...
Just making sure.
Okay.
So... one of the central relationships in this movie is Sadie and Courtney. So yeah, I agree. So Courtney is this, I don't know, like she's in her 40s. She must be in her 40s, right?
Yeah, it's something like that.
She's
or like late 30s,
late 30s, 40s. Much older than Sadie. Liberal feminist activist who like is like the chairwoman of like the largest nonprofit feminist organization in the country. Does all this like petty bourgeois activist stuff with like stuffy accountants in a room discussing budgeting, and is just generally like a 9-to-5 person who like lives her sort of upper middle class life, and was a professor of like something or other women's studies or something, and that is where she met Sadie while Sadie was like an undergrad.
Yeah, she was a guest lecturer.
Yes, she was a guest lecturer, and Sadie met her there. And they like started this relationship. So Sadie is like 10, 20 years younger. And she's this like, as we've said, this like catastrophic, messy, radical teen who, I don't know if she's a teenager or early 20s, but...
somewhere there.
And she's like, abolish everything and free love and like, let's smoke weed in our living room and argue about how best to destroy the patriarchy with my queer buddies with shaved heads. And Sadie, though, has been in this relationship with Courtney for a long time. And Courtney, like, puts her up. She, like, pays rent for her or just, like, has her in her home. They live together. And, like, probably pays for Sadie's food. Like, I don't think Sadie works. Sadie is, like...
no, I don't think she does.
Fully dedicated to, like, activism and living this lifestyle, living off of Courtney's teat. I say that because there's a very, like, mommy dynamic here. Like, they got together, Sadie says, right after Sadie's mom died.
Ooh.
And they've been together ever since. And, like...
Ain't that how it goes?
It's pretty fucked.
It is, because it's just like, because I mean, I've heard about this a lot in terms of like gay men spaces where it's the older gay man grooming the younger boy. But to see it even on the other end and just the reverse faction is just as, oh God.
Yeah, gays is the same.
The reverse faction. Queer factionalism. Lesbians versus gays.
Queer intersectionalism. But yeah, because I mean, like, it's a weird situation because it's also bringing up the idea of admiring somebody, but also, but like that going to a weird extreme. It's a very cliche, almost like the student falls in love with a teacher scenario. But it's
Yeah, well, you do that, and then you become president of France. Sorry.
hiss.
Cheap shot. Continue.
Political. Yeah. So I mean, it's like that. I guess it's becoming less common. I know it was definitely more common back in the 70s and 80s, but God, it just no.
Yeah.
Like, I get the idea. Like, there's nothing wrong about it, but it's just like, I guess the setup in this scenario. Like, I guess like, there's no problem with an older person dating a younger person, obviously.
It's
but
this
like,
dependency of it. It's the fact that Sadie is materially dependent on Courtney. She talks about why she won't break up with Courtney, and part of it is like this mommy issues thing, but it's also she's gonna have to move back in with her parents who don't really accept the fact that she's this like anarcho-feminist queer, and that's a problem. And so she's sort of reliant on Courtney.
and so that creates like a predatory
Or
sense,
like a power dynamic.
yeah,
Which is not like it doesn't seem intentional on Courtney's part. Like it seems
Yeah.
like she's just like it seems like it's like Sadie who's the one who's like stringing things along.
No,
more than
I agree.
Courtney.
I'm not saying that Sadie's
Yeah.
a good person, which is actually a good
Yeah.
segue into our next sort of relationship dynamic in this movie, which is that Sadie is this like serially unavailable flirt who like leads women on for a month or two and then stops seeing them when they ask for commitment, and she can't leave Courtney.
which my understanding that does happen in the lesbian
Oh yeah, that
community.
happens a
Yeah.
lot. I mean, I've seen that a lot, and
We're dating. Join my band.
Hold on. We're dating. Let's get a U-Haul.
Let's start a small
Yeah,
business.
we're dating. Let's start a podcast.
good.
There we go. But and like it is this whole thing is somewhat indicative of like the queer community in the sense that it's so incestuous. And just exactly how many of these
What a
like,
word.
queer spaces is there, can you think of a better word?
No.
Insular?
No.
Sexually insular.
We'll call it sexual LinkedIn.
No, it is these communities that are tied together by people like dating and fucking.
Yeah.
Which gets into
okay, we're gonna go sexual MySpace.
which it gets into like a more complicated thing because there's like thinking of like the trans community, there's the whole thing about people going through a state of arrested development and their first time feeling like sexually liberated and sexually available, and then but it just ends up being really toxic, like we
because you're
see
so
in this film,
vulnerable
where like
in that space.
Yeah,
'Cause
exactly.
You're actually like, because you're figuring your shit out for the first time, even though you might be older than most people who are doing that, you are just as unsure of yourself and vulnerable and easily manipulated.
Which is also which is very true for like trans women that I've seen, which is just like, because when you start transition, you basically start back at the beginning of puberty, so you tend to be very vulnerable during those times.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where it doesn't matter the age of the individual, if they've been in it longer than you are and you're exceedingly insecure, that person or certain people can easily take advantage of that.
Well, yeah, and that happens more broadly in queer spaces where, like, when you're, like, we see it in this movie. Sadie meets Anna, and Sadie is, like, the really exciting veteran lesbian who knows her shit and knows the politics and knows what she's doing and knows how to flirt. And, like, that's very exciting for Anna, because Anna doesn't know anything. Anna's, like, had one girlfriend, and she's, like, lived in this very straight world. And to her, Sadie is just mesmerizing, and Sadie can kind of string her along really easily and can like kind of seduce her really easily with that dynamic.
Yeah.
Well, actually, do we know that Anna's only had
Yeah, she
one
said at one
girlfriend?
point that this was
Yeah.
her first girlfriend.
Yeah. Also, just as a side
Okay.
note, quickly before we go on, can we all just take a moment to appreciate that there was basically like no homophobia in this movie?
Well, that's something that I wanted to actually talk about, is that it did this thing that I absolutely hate, is where, because Anna has like the most like accepting family, like super chill. It was really cool to see like a
Latino?
a family of
Yeah.
color. They're
Oh,
all Hispanic family.
Actually, just interesting part about that. Originally, the character was named Hannah and was Jewish, but they actually completely changed the script around for Melanie Diaz, who played Anna.
Cool. Love that.
That's cool. But still, like, just the fact that she had this really, really healthy family environment, and she was shitty to them, and like she was
yeah.
like creating this toxic space
Yeah.
with her supportive
we
family.
didn't talk about that.
What it's kind of, it reminds me of like Girl, going back to Girl. It's the fact that
trans person is
the family is great.
Can we just call it girl symptom from now on, or because like I
That's the new name. That's the new name of the podcast. Everything has to be compared to that
God
fucking
awful movie.
cursed
Well, yeah,
ass
because it's
movie.
like her family's so good. They like are just like super accepting of her. Like the only sort of vague issue is that they really want her to like wear makeup at her sister's wedding.
yeah.
At least
Yeah,
it's
which
some
is
lip
just
gloss.
like that's
even,
the
like,
family
it's
thing.
like whatever.
Yeah.
And if she was like adamant about it, they probably wouldn't have made her, because they were pretty chill. Because
Yeah, and
then Anna like gets involved in the scene and like becomes this fucking prick. You know, she's like like not showing up to her sister's bridal shower because marriage is like violence, which like grow up. You know, this
Yeah,
is sort of what I
it's-
mean about politics.
it's-
Is
Exactly.
Exactly, or
confrontation.
even like she has a nice house. They're being supportive of her, and like she fucking like spray paints and trashes her bedroom to look all
Yeah.
seen.
yeah, and like she's
yeah,
the problem, which yeah, Rhea has a point that it's sort of questionable as like a narrative choice to make the queer person, like the LGBT person, the bad person in that dynamic. But
Yeah, like all the LGBT people to like one degree or another were with the exception
Except
of
Aggie.
Aggie. Yeah, with the exception of Aggie, like all of them were just a little unhinged.
yeah,
Well, Addie and Calvin being the hitchhiker they picked up along the way.
Calvin
but
was
even
hot.
then, yeah, Calvin was absolutely.
We
We
love.
stand Calvin.
Absolutely.
But yeah, like it's Julie Babbitt who directed, so I want to believe that she just didn't pull it off correctly.
But it has absolutely none of the heart that Cheerleader
Yeah.
had. Like
I
it
don't
had
know. I
none
think
of
it had
that
some
just-
heart, but
It has some
positivity.
heart, but again, like it was like there was a heartfelt nature to this. Like this felt just like Dyke Drama the movie, and they just have like it felt like Julie Babbitt wanted to make a movie about
Dyke Drama, great band, by the
absolutely.
way.
But it felt like she just wanted to make a movie about dyke drama, and then she found feminism as a means to do that, rather than a movie about feminism that she had lesbian characters in.
I mean, you know, there should be some movies about that though.
There is.
I think I don't think it had to be about feminism. I think the drama and like the interpersonal conflict did actually sort of, it was interesting. I think it could have been portrayed better, but like
Yeah.
I don't know. It's my lived experience. It's a bunch of fucking gays being disastrous and sleeping with each other badly and causing shit with their friend group and being shitty to everybody around them. And like changing their politics to attract a hot girl. You know, this happens.
You know, for any young queer people listening to this is just like a haunting revelation of the future.
No, you're going.
Oh, I just came out as gay. Let me tell you how it's going to go.
Yeah, I recommend it. It's an important stage in development.
Fuck up your life. It's worth it. By the way, this movie only made $33,723.
It makes me feel bad for torrenting it.
Yeah. Okay, if we can find a DVD copy, we'll
I
get
already
it.
ordered
We'll have a
one.
collective.
It's okay. Julie Babbitt, you got
Nice.
my $12. Moving on. One of the last topics before we get into the conclusion here, and I would like to briefly touch on, is the fact that Aggie, the trans man character in this show, was part of the CIA, simply because apparently the CIA was an all-women's group. But as they said in the
Yeah.
movie, that Aggie was allowed to be an honorary member because he was born with a clit.
Yeah, so like the line where Aggie is introduced, Anna says, because they're like, oh, here's Aggie, the man of the house. And Anna's like, wait, I thought this was a girls group. And I think it's Sadie, someone's like, Aggie gets a pass for being born with a clit, and then Anna's like confused and makes like a weird comment that I forget, and Aggie is like unfazed because Aggie's chill, but the movie makes clear that like Anna fucked up and that they need to like treat Aggie with respect and as a man, and then it's sort of just left like Aggie is just in the group as a trans guy.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not sure which angle you guys want to approach with this, but the philosophical question for me is just like, because gender segregated groups aren't always the greatest way to go, but this group made it a point of saying that it was all women, and then including the Aggie, so I'm still not sure if I view that as a progressive in the context of that, or they were actually holding views that Aggie wasn't really a man and we were just all playing along sort of thing.
Yeah, so like I
If I had to guess, the implication was that, you know, the group is for everybody, that a assigned female at birth person has a lot of causes in common with cis
sort
women.
of reproductive health and rights.
Right.
Which I get from that point, and especially because this is from like 2007, which is before like the major like
so
trans
we do
idpol,
have to appreciate
like,
that
theory went off.
Yeah, well, yeah, and like I don't think that this group really had a very fully formed take on like trans issues. I think that Aggie wanted to be included, like wanted to be part of the group. I don't think that they were like somehow like being transphobic by allowing him to be involved. And like they don't misgender him.
No, that's true.
There are some like bioessentialist sort of undertones to a lot of their rhetoric. Like at one point the artist girl is like doing some art, and someone like who we barely see in the movie but like wanders in, and it's like, you know, I do a real job so that you fuckers can do this politics shit and while I pay the rent. And then like looks at the art and is like, oh, you know, more vaginal imagery. Yeah. And like wanders off.
Yeah.
And that is sort of a problem with the CIA, is that they have this very like body part focused activism, which is was a problem with a lot of radical feminism, especially back then.
Yeah, because I mean that was one of the main causes of, or one of the main champion causes of second wave, which was the idea that women aren't just boiled down to their physical body parts, which is, as a side note, really interesting that TERFs have then co-opted that to basically saying that women are boiled down to their body parts. But I digress.
And so like that is like a problem, and like I honestly think that if there was a trans woman in this movie, they would have been pretty chill about her. Like I don't think that they were like, these are not TERFs. They're just teenagers who are into feminist theory and haven't read anything about trans people, who have a trans guy friend who wants to be part of the group, and they are doing their best.
But like, I don't know, I think it opens up a broader, interesting discussion in how trans people do interface with these types of activist circles, because in the sense that like where do trans people's take on abortion, like where does a trans woman's stance on abortion lay, or like what types of women's health things do trans women have a more valuable or less valuable say in?
So now you're asking our take.
Yeah, this is an interesting conversation because I literally had this conversation about a month and a half ago with someone, a cis woman, about the idea of a trans woman being allowed in a it's like a like basically women who can't become pregnant. There's a support group on Facebook, and I think they wanted to kick the trans woman out, or they did. And so it's the idea of just like they thought it was okay because trans women don't have reproductive parts, but it's like the same time
like,
too.
Women who can't have kids.
Yeah, I mean, like that's what I asked. And so, like, this is the general kind of idea that I, like, for anybody who's wondering, like, is it, are they being transphobic internally, maybe not intentionally? The question is like, are you limiting a trans woman simply based on, is there any reason you would deny a cis woman to participate in a certain woman's space? If that answer is yes, then maybe then maybe there's a point for them not being there. But if the answer is no, then if you say that trans women can't do that because they are trans, then you are basically creating a second tier of woman.
Well, yeah,
but it creates I think it'd be interesting depending on the specifics of the situation, because if you had like a woman who was like born without a uterus or whatever, and she knew this from early on, versus somebody who is just, for lack of a better term, barren. Those two people are going to have different experiences. If it's a specific support group for people who have tried to have kids and should be able to, based on their plumbing, but haven't, that's going to be a different support structure than, somebody who's knows for a fact that they've never had the option.
Yeah, and I mean, that was the thing, that was my saying, is is this a support group? Is this for people that specifically have uteruses that don't work? Is that what the support group is? The answer is no. It's just the general unable to have children for one reason or another. It's well, then a trans woman should be allowed. I mean, the person's comeback to this was simply just women are born with the expectation that they will have children regardless, which I think is an interesting conversation because, I don't think that's necessarily, that may be a lot of women and most women, but I don't think that's necessarily true to all women. And number two, which is just the idea of just, even if someone doesn't have the expectation since birth, maybe they have the longing for. I mean, myself personally, I knew I wanted to be a mom before I knew I wanted to be trans, and I didn't know what to make of those thoughts. And I wanted to be a mom since I was little. And so someone to come up to me and say that my struggles with not being able to have or carry a child is less than theirs, I kind of view that as a bit of a slap in the face.
Yeah. To sort of broaden this, my take is that when we're talking about biological related or physiological function related political issues, we can just be specific. We don't need to necessarily limit it to gender. This is why when sort of activist circles talk about reproductive health now, we talk about reproductive health, not women's health. Because it's more inclusive.
Because even within cis women, there are going to be interesting cases that won't be included in,
and it's totally.
The broad.
It's including trans guys. It's including non-binary people, and it's not excluding trans women because we don't have the same political needs. And so, in that sense, you can just sort of reframe the way you're talking about the issues to remove the relationship between gender and physiology.
It's interesting and it's easy-ish to do, which is basically just adjust the verbiage. It's you can just say people who have periods rather than saying women's periods. You can say
it's women have periods. Not all women have periods, and not everyone who has a period is a woman. But if you're a woman and you say women who have periods, it's not incorrect. It's just not fully inclusive.
Exactly.
Yeah, trans women, cis women, pre-op trans women, and post-op trans women might have it's going to be different if you have a support thing for vaginal health, pre-op trans women might, or non-op trans women, it wouldn't make sense to go to that, but post-op trans women, it would make sense to go to that along with cis women, that type of thing.
Exactly. And I mean, I don't think any trans woman is trying to dominate the conversations, or trans man or non-binary person is trying to dominate the conversation in those circles. They simply just want to exist in them because the information is relevant to them.
And also this isn't necessarily exclusive to these types of cis spaces. What this is kind of reminding me of is I have a friend who's a fairly mask-presenting non-binary and a very, openly and, very publicly, very actively, non-binary, but has been explicitly excluded from places, spaces that are labeled for non-binary people for being mask-presenting.
Yeah.
It's just absurd.
And, again, Yeah, which again, the issue is if you have a bunch of people who are we are, this is for feminine people and it's open to non-binaries, but for one feminist reason or another, we're not comfortable we don't want to have a space where we're around masculine or AMAB people, masculine AMAB people because of this, that, and the other thing. You would have to get specific, because just to say this is open to women and non-binary people.
Yeah, but
that is...
Okay, you have to get specific, but you also need to have a good goddamn reason for that distinction, right? You need to be specific about what your group is for and what your space is for. And that's fine. And, you need to be specific if you are going to exclude people. And there are valid reasons to exclude people from a space or from a discussion. I think almost everyone agrees with that. Not everyone actually has a space in every space. But... if you're going to have a space that excludes people, you need to have a reason to be excluding those people, and it needs to be a justifiable reason. And I think that often people just the issue here is we'll just be specific and exclude people but then you're excluding people that like for actually just like transphobic and shitty reasons
Yeah.
versus
No,
like,
absolutely.
justifiable political or social ones.
Also one thing like thing that it kind of prompted the thought of is because like looking at it as like, is it transphobic to, or is it like invalidating of somebody's like existence as like a female or a male to like exclude trans people from a certain like space. But then I almost thought like, what if, and I don't know if there are, because like we agree that there are some like men specific issues that need to be addressed, like for like you know, like sort of the men's rights, like the MRA thing. It's like, you guys are right about some things, but you're right about it for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, well, there's like physiological issues, and there's also like social issues,
and also like toxic masculinity, physiological issues, like, but also like, are trans women, like, what of those spaces would trans women be allowed into, and like, are there any good faith ways that like places that would exist that wouldn't like invalidate the trans woman's gender by them participating
around a bunch of cis dudes.
I'm just saying, like, it's like,
I don't mean around cis dudes talking about my gender.
No, I'm just saying, but it's like, I'm just saying, like, what would it be like on the flip of it?
I mean, it could technically exist, but like, it's more difficult. I would say it's more difficult in male-dominated spaces just because of socialization.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and like power. You know, like if there's like a testicular cancer support group, I probably wouldn't want to go to the testicular cancer support group, but I want to be allowed, right?
Yeah. You'd want something. Exactly. You just want to feel welcome in the space. Like there's some place where you could go.
Yeah. The problem is, I know I wouldn't, just because it'd be a bunch of...
I would love to see you of all people show up and just be like, "Hi, my name's Amy. I have testicular cancer."
Oh no! I have to get my balls shot. Oh no!
Well, it's
What
like
will I do?
I'm just like Robert Paulson, you know, like I did too many horse steroids, and now
Oh my god.
now I do tits.
Okay. Well, I think we should probably wrap this up about now. So
Yeah, about meow.
Right meow. So right meow, we're
Right
going
meow.
to meow and go over the meow
I will never
by
meow.
saying, is this movie good representation? And I would say today we're going to frame representation is, I would ask the question to you, both of you, is this good feminist representation? And is this good queer representation?
I'd say that it's accurate.
Let me put it this way. How do you feel about this representation?
Yeah, that's the question.
Like, it is very accurate. Like, I've definitely met lots of people like in this situation, and I think that, you know, if a cis person were watching this, I think it would be like, you know,
Essentially like a straight person watching
an
this.
interest. That's what I mean. Like, it might round out their view of. I don't know if it might either round out or cement their view of, you know, radical feminists and like radical lesbians. So like, it's fine. It's fine. I don't know. It's fine.
Yeah, like my view on this is like, I agree with Ree. It's accurate to a certain scene. There is very much a certain scene that is like this. It looks like this. It has the contours of this. It feels like this. I've been in this space. I have inhabited this style, this aesthetic of politics, and I know a lot of people who do or did. And I think that like the scene aspects of it are probably the most accurate part of it, and probably the best representation of it, of like sort of the social space where a bunch of like gay people are political and radical and sexual with each other is a thing that happens. And like I found it really interesting to see a movie go into that in like a very honest and frank way, and I think it was like a fun movie. I do like Ree said about people's views on feminism being cemented by this, and I do worry about that. I do worry if some like person who was skeptical of feminism watched this movie, they would walk away being like, right, yeah, I was right. They're just a bunch of horny, angry teenagers who have to get their shit together, and they have no good points. And like, that's not my takeaway here. I think my takeaway is that there's like drama and messiness and critique to be made of that scene, but the politics aren't really the focus of that. Whereas I think it could be easily misconstrued.
Totally. I personally think, I don't know, the movie was pretty fun to me. There was some directorial choices in terms of just the narrative that made things kind of confusing and ambiguous with the messages. Like, you know, I wasn't sure if, hold on, we have an automated cat feeder, so it's just going off right now. All right, good.
I want an automated refeeder.
Yeah, that'd be awesome, right? It's just like every night at like 9 o'clock, it's like, yeah, time to eat.
That's called like a partner. That's what men are for.
It's the only reason we keep him around. No, it's I liked it. I like the aesthetic. I mean, like, I'm a huge fan of 90s grunge feminism and the zine culture that kind of came out of that. So I'm biased in that regard. Like I said, I think it's a good movie. I think it's a fun movie. I think it's mostly harmless. I agree with Amy that, you know, if the wrong person sees it and they're gonna be like, oh, that's what feminists are. It's, well, they can and cannot be. So. But overall, I would say give it a watch. I think it's fun, and I think it's like, I don't know, fucking Julie Babbitt. She rules.
It's thought-provoking.
Yes. THOT. Provoking.
Oh,
And,
it sure is.
Yeah. All right, so, yeah, that
This thought
concludes
is provoked.
So that concludes this week's episode of Tranifesto, because that's the name of the show. Like I said, thank you all again for joining in. We're on episode 11. By the way, we made it past episode 12 or 10. So we're on.
Yes.
We somehow made it past 10 of these goddamn episodes. Which means
Goodness
that
gracious.
we've been doing this since mid-January, and we're still going. I don't think I've committed to a project this long since chemotherapy. So it's
I haven't
It's
committed
great.
to, like, anything this long.
oh, sweet summer child.
Except, like, university. But I never really committed to university.
Yeah, you're just
You know,
gonna-
we're
Yeah, it
we're,
doesn't
we're,
count. That's-
we're sort of, like, seeing each other, but we haven't, like, made it official.
yeah, you're friends without benefits.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, thank you all again for joining us. We're still working on Patreon stuff and Discord stuff. We're just lazy fuckers in that regard, and I'll get around to doing it. However, we did start getting some of the samples for some of the stuff that we want to give out or sell to people, or give away in Patreon, or whatever we're gonna do with it. I'll probably just mail you a bunch of them.
That reminds me, I need to make I need to add the name of our podcast to that Punisher logo trans flag,
Ugh.
Oh,
and
God, yeah.
and because I think that's our
Yeah,
stick.
that's
It's a
gonna
good
be.
one.
Yeah, if any of you haven't had a chance, please go take a look over at Ree's Twitter profile. I'm going to insist that she pin it.
Oh, I have to go back and find it and plus that I'm gonna do one without the fucking thin blue line on
no.
it.
No, I think you should.
It's truly
I
the
think that
most
should be
cursed
removed.
image. So if Ree actually does manage to find it, then hopefully she'll post it again. So to conclude, I'm Madeline Hops. I'm at rabbit_is_dead on Twitter. I'm also at rabbit_is_dead on Twitch. You can come watch me play Rage 2, Destiny, or I draw a bunch of fucked up art with dicks and cunts and fucking weird shit. And we talk about the paranormal till like 3 or 4 in the morning,
We
so
love
it's pretty dope.
dicks and cunts and fucking weird shit and the paranormal.
Yeah,
So-
that's pretty much my entire brand.
Paranormal dick cunt.
And then the aliens abducted my foreskin.
So if you need to contact Madeline, you can email paranormaldickcunts@gmail.com.
Or use a Ouija board.
I'm Amy Blair. I'm at Lavender Ashtray on Twitter. I just post. I'm just working all summer. Life's okay.
What are you working
I have no
at?
projects. I'm just like doing the thing.
Oh, okay.
We don't need to talk about
We have
it.
to start. No, we have to start our YouTube
Oh
channel. This
yeah,
is the perfect
me and
time to start our
Ree
YouTube
are
channel.
thinking about doing a YouTube thing, but we should figure out the contours
so
of that
deeply
before
heard
we,
it.
before we
What are you guys gonna do?
announce it.
Oh yeah, don't say anything now.
We're gonna be cam girls, but we're gonna make it like YouTube safe.
Just say
So-
for porn.
Yeah, and just wear pasties.
Yeah, there we go. Anyways, I'm Ree Carter at Ree Carter, RHICARTER. I've been making video games, so if you look up my studio, Dead Genre Studios, so at Dead Genre, we have some video games out that are fun, and one of them is free if you play it on your Android phone, and we're going to get it out for iPhone. Anyway, go look at that.
Yeah,
and
you better.
give me
I've been
money
wanting
so I
to
can
play that
afford to live.
forever.
I know, soon. I'm not a programmer, so I'll bug them with that.
The artist.
And yeah,
All right, perfect. Well, thanks again all for joining us, guys, gals, and NB pals. Oh yeah, smooth. I love it. It's good, and you all know it.
that's good.
Fuck off. All right, I
good.
love you all. I'll see you all again in probably about 2 weeks or whatever when we see you. Okay, bye.
Bye.